This is Do It For a Living, your source for inside information on the future of automotive performance.
I hear a lot of people complaining, well, the market will not support my product because it's too expensive. Well, is it really that your product is too expensive? Or is it that there's not enough value in that product for people to want to spend that much money? Are you trying to trade a carrot for a Snickers bar? So
Good.
If you have something that people want and that they appreciate, how can you not make money?
What's holding you back from starting or growing your business into what it can be? Well, if you're listening to this, it's not a lack of information. What you're about to hear is all you need to get motivated and start making waves. Do It For a Living podcast details the journey of today's true players in their own words. Find out how they broke out so you can too. The time is now. The time is always now. I've got Paul Yaw from Injector Dynamics. Paul, you're the mad scientist behind Injector Dynamics, the leading performance fuel injector company that, in my opinion, has fundamentally changed the way the performance industry perceives fuel injection. And I also want to say that your presence is feared on many online forums where BS is prevalent. So how do you do it?
Can I offer two corrections?
Please.
Angry scientist.
All right.
And nobody's afraid of me. They're afraid of their own incompetence. Ooh, that was mean, wasn't it?
All right. So expand upon that.
Let me see. The question, how do I do it? I'm not sure that I've done anything all that noteworthy, but I think there are lots of pieces that are interesting. I don't know if I have a single answer that works for you. How's that for a non-answer? How's that for a great way to start an interview? No bumper music, and I totally blew your first question. Fuck it, I don't like that question. Move on to the next.
That's not a good one. Let's spool up a little bit. Have you always been a car guy, and do you come from a car family? Was that in your blood? Have you been fucking working on things forever?
Not a car family, but always a car guy, and I'm not sure why. Actually, probably nobody's sure why, but I was a bookworm when I was a kid, and I swear to God, when I was in junior high, I read every fucking book in that library. I would just kind of go from left to right and work my way through, and there were a lot of car books. I mean, an awful lot of books about, a 16-year-old getting his first car and drag racing and raising hell and modifying the car, and of course they look cool, so I guess I've always been a car guy.
So what kind of stuff are you, when you were a kid, that you were interested in? What were you reading? You said left to right, but specifically, what got you going?
On cars, you mean?
On cars, what interested you?
Everything that I didn't understand, which was a lot of stuff. What did interest me? Electronics, audio, cars, anything related to any kind of science. I guess anything that could ultimately be described mathematically at the end of the day. Meaning I wasn't that interested in psychology, for instance. I might have made it through a chapter of a psychology book and said, well, fuck, this is stupid. I can't make any sense out of this. But anything technical in nature, I always felt like as a kid I would get this wow moment whenever I figured something out. Like, oh, my God, that's how it works. I get it. So that was the kind of thing that excited me.
And you've mentioned when I've asked you before what matters, you've said measurable results. So is that what attracts you to mathematical things instead of psychology? I think demonstratable results would be the case. Something that you can define, as opposed to just scratching your head and wondering about it. Although now that we talk about that, I'm not sure that covers everything as a kid, because I was very much into music, playing guitar and drums and pretty much whatever instrument my dad would allow me to play without driving everyone in the house nuts. And, of course, you could certainly apply some mathematics to that, but at the end of the day, is there a proper mathematical description for why Stevie Ray Vaughan can play guitar the way that he can? So that's kind of the opposite of what I told you I was interested in before. So maybe there wasn't. That's what makes you an interesting guy.
To you, nobody else gives a shit.
Tell us about Injector Dynamics. How does that get going? Tell us about what Injector Dynamics is and what you guys are trying to accomplish.
It might be easiest to tell you how it got started.
Please.
I was working on a project that I wanted to make a statement with, which was true of most of the projects that I worked on. I was always trying to make a statement to try to do something exceptional and get people's attention.
To you or to someone else? You trying to prove something to yourself or to the community?
All of the above. And one of the things that happened when I first got into fuel injection is that I was using engine dynos at the time. In fact, to this day, I have very little experience on chassis dynos, but using an engine dyno, measuring airflow, measuring fuel flow, and finding that the numbers just didn't match up. I could see my actual mass flows from the instrumentation on the dyno. Nothing seemed to make sense in terms of here's the pulse width that the ECU is delivering to the injector, and here's the amount of flow that I'm getting. Why can I not even find a proper pattern here? Why can't I even find a simple multiplier that says, oh, my injector fuel flow is off by maybe 5% from what the dyno says everywhere? It was just a scattered fucking mess, and I couldn't make sense out of it. And I realized that the injectors don't do what it is that you think they do, and so I did a lot of asking and got a lot of nothing answers where I would try to get some details about injectors from people in the business, and you would either get blank silence at the other end, crickets chirping, or they try to make you feel stupid for even asking. What are you trying to figure out? And I couldn't tell them because I didn't know. The question was, what the fuck does this injector do? I don't have a clue. All I know is that I tell the ECU, give it more fuel, and I get more fuel. So to make a long story short, I got tired of all the non-answers that I was getting and pulled the fuel flow meter off the dyno and rigged up a little fixture to start pulsing the injector at various pulse widths and plotted it all out into Microsoft Excel and said, what the hell is all this? This is not even close to what I thought an injector did. And I contacted Motec and said, hey, what is this? And they said, well, we're not sure, but we sure hope you figure it out. So we went a little further, started to make some sense out of it, and at some point I realized I'd finally come across something relatively big, meaning that the market that I was a part of did not understand this piece that they were using, and Motec was poking at me to take it further and figure it out, and they said, we don't understand exactly what it is that you're working on here because we don't know the answers yet, but it's important, so keep going. And I did, finally figured it all out, and Motec said, this is important, we would like to send all of our customers to you so that you can characterize these injectors and make the tuners' jobs easier. And then, what year was it? 2007, I think, I did a seminar for Motec called Understanding Your Fuel Injector, and it exploded from there. Well, of course, part of the explosion was partnering up with Tony Palo at T1 to handle all of the sales and dealer setup and that type of thing. But that's the short story. It was a need for information for myself that I thought would be valuable. And once I got that information, I found that, not surprisingly, it was valuable to other people, not just myself.
So obviously you started this not for a profit. You didn't look at it saying, hey, I want to make $1 million. Yesterday, Paul, you told me that you ignored profit. How did that influence your product development, and how did you survive financially during that time?
So at some point when I realized this was potentially a pretty big deal, I worked on it for about 5 months straight. I didn't do anything else. I was so sleep deprived during that period of time that I don't remember most of it, but I do have all my notebooks from that period, and it's kind of funny to look at that and see all the things that I got wrong in the initial process. But I worked on it straight for 5 months. Doing crazy shit like sleeping on the office floor because I knew that I was so tired if I went home and got into a comfortable bed and took a shower that I would probably sleep for 15 hours. So I would just snooze on the shop floor or on the office floor for a few hours and get back up and tear at it again. But more to your point, after that 5-month period was over, I realized, wow, this is a pretty big deal, and now I'm all out of money. So so I borrowed some money from a friend. I said, hey, I just spent all my money. I figured this thing out. I think it's a big deal. I need a couple months' worth of operating funds so that I can get this idea out there and see where it goes. And he gave me some money, and here we are.
So I'm trying to find a common thread between all these different people that we're talking to, and there's two things that I've noticed so far. And one of them, surprisingly to me, is a lack of self-doubt. And the second one is people are willing to do whatever it takes. Like you're sleeping on the shop floor.
Yep. And going broke and knowing I was going broke the whole time.
Right. So how do you stay motivated? What's the point?
I knew it was something. Well, let me go back a little ways. For years in business, I had been not worried about money, not worried about profit. As long as my bills were paid, I wasn't concerned. And it was about my 36th birthday where I realized that I was closer to 40 than 30, that I freaked out and said, holy shit, I might need to retire someday. I might want to have a kid. What the fuck am I doing? And I started thinking about how I could make money instead of traveling from one racetrack to the next and worrying about track records. It was time to grow up. Anyway, so the motivation came from the fact that this was something that I could do in volume. It had been building for a few years. I had to do something different, and I realized that this was it, and it was worth putting the effort into because the volume was there. But in terms of trying to find a common thread between people who have managed to accomplish something, however small or big it may be, I would say the common thread is focus.
Focus.
Yeah.
Not determination, but staying on one thing.
Well, the determination comes from the focus. Everything comes from the focus. I mean, look, let me just throw something at you. Everybody defines success a little bit differently. Some people say success is making a lot of money. So let's just say that that's success, right? I know a lot of dumb motherfuckers that have a whole lot of money. And I don't mean they got it handed to them. I mean dumb motherfuckers that made a lot of money. And you say, wait a minute, this guy's a fucking moron. How did he pull this off? Well, that's what he was focused on. That's what he thought about all the time. And so eventually he did it. And you say determination. Well, what gives you the determination to do this, to sleep on the office floor, whatever the case it may be? It was focusing on the end goal, focusing on what I wanted.
And so I like hearing that you're not just a really intelligent technical guy, but you looked at something that was scalable. You looked at it from a business perspective as well. It wasn't just about proving a point, but you also saw the necessity or the possibility for a really successful business, and success being measured here in dollars.
Yeah, and that was a change. Like I said, on that 36th birthday, there's something weird about that 6, which is scary because I'm 46 next year, but I'll go back a bit to tell you why. When I turned 26, I flipped out too. I said, holy shit, I'm closer to 30 than 20. That means I'm going to be an adult soon. For some reason, I had considered if I was still in my 20s, it was okay to be a drunken fucking retard and raise hell and get in trouble. And 26 scared me, and I quit drinking at 26. So then at 36, I said, stop traveling from racetrack to racetrack and worrying about track records and try to figure out how to make some money. And so that was when the focus changed, and that's what led to Injector Dynamics, I guess, in terms of things you might be looking for, common threads. But everything comes from the focus, every little detail. If you say, wow, this guy's really good at something, whatever it is, it's a matter of focus. I mean, certainly some people have some genetic predisposition to be good at things, but everybody who's achieved substantial success in any area has done it as a result of focus. I mean, I think when we get done, if you sit down and try to make a list, try to come up with a bunch of examples to prove me wrong on that, I don't think you can. I think you'll find that that's the one thing that they all have in common, and that's the one thing that would define the difference between the winners and the losers, to put it abruptly. I mean, whether it's, winning a race or whatever it may be. Obviously, that's just my opinion. It's not something I can prove to you mathematically, but that's my take.
So now you've made it. You're making, products that matter. How did you get to that point? I guess, how did you start to delegate tasks and not start taking everything on yourself? How do you justify hiring a new person, and when is that time? Like, are you a guy that says, no, get out of the way, let me do this. This is only I can do this?
Yes, very much so.
That's you.
To my detriment. It's not a good thing. And in fact, if you're looking for words of wisdom on how to do a better job of that, I'm the wrong guy. I'm really bad at that. I want to do everything. I don't have time to. I like to jump in the middle of things and say, hey, what the fuck are you doing? Why didn't you do it this way? And so I've grudgingly learned that I can't do that. I can't be in the middle of everything and do everything myself. And I say grudgingly because some people are just very smart about it. They understand that that's what they need to do to attain their goals. And so do I, because I'm focused on the future. But ultimately, I'm not good at that. I'm really bad at that.
You have to recognize that assembling a team around you is an absolute necessity. I
do. Yep, I recognize it, and I've put a lot of effort into it, but it doesn't mean that I'm particularly good at it. In fact, I think with everybody that you talk to, you're talking to people from various companies that have achieved, some level of success, and you're looking for common themes. Hopefully when these people talk to you, they'll tell you about the things that they're really bad at too. I mean, I think when you brought that up, you were expecting maybe some bit of wisdom where I say, you know what, this is the key to doing that. This is how it's done. But the truth is, I'm pretty fucking bad at it. Sorry.
I'd say that we learn more from failure moments and bad experiences than anything else. So this is a perfect transition into the worst experience that you've had in business. I can imagine that if you're jumping in the middle of a project when you've given it to one of your guys, and now you jump in and you say, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you doing it that way? You get a lot of kickback. People are either going to fight you or they're going to tuck tail. So tell us about a situation where you've fucked yourself. Tell us the worst experience that you've had in business and what you learned from it.
Today, yesterday, the day before.
There's got to be one standout moment where you made a mistake and you learned something from it that maybe really was an aha moment.
There are a lot. But the fact is, the worst one, and I'm not even sure what that is, but the worst one would be too embarrassing to tell. I mean, seriously.
Oh, no.
I don't want to come out and say,
you can't do that.
Okay, but I'll give you.
You got to do it.
I'll give you one that people can relate to, and
give us one that really matters to you.
Okay.
The real deal. Like, put it out. Put your heart on a plate.
ID 1600. Remember that? Remember that thing that we took back off the market? That cost me in excess of $250,000 fucking dollars. Here's how that went down. As you know now, that injector had horrible temperature sensitivity problems. And if you got the injector up in the neighborhood of, or fuel temperature in the neighborhood of about, I think it was about 160 degrees F, which is really high, it would cut the flow in half. The point is that as the temperature increased, the flow went down. And so when we first started playing with that injector, all of the testing was done on my test equipment, which runs at 125 F. And I did all the testing, and I was so confident in our data and my testing at that point that I was willing to put it out there. So I get some of the pieces to Tony. He tests them on the dyno in his car that he drives back and forth to work. So in brief dyno sessions and a 5-minute drive to work, he never got the fuel hot. And so the injectors worked great. Everybody was happy. And we put them out there, and then we start getting some reports here and there that sound to me like people are boiling the fuel, getting the fuel too hot and getting cavitation at the pump inlet. And that was not the case at all. It was the fucked up injectors, and we didn't catch it, or I didn't catch it. Tony's not responsible for that. I didn't catch it. And so at that point, business was going really well. We were growing quickly, and I thought, this is working really well. I'm very happy with what we're doing. And I realized that I had to announce to the public, hey, guess what? I'm a fucking moron. And I thought that I had destroyed the name that we had created. Turns out I was wrong, and we can go into that later on. But, yeah, that was my big fuck up that most people who are going to listen to this can relate to, because they probably all remember that fucking debacle.
I remember when I got the email, and I looked to my guy to my right, and I said, I'm so glad I'm not them right now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And can I be honest with you? Yeah. Like a month later, I hadn't even heard another thing about it. And looking back now, I'm amazed and impressed at how you guys were able to handle it, because nobody ever talks about it. You guys owned it and fixed it And that's that.
You know what? We talked about this a little bit ahead of time about questions you might ask, so I could try to prepare. And of course, that all went out the fucking window. But,
yes, it did.
But hang on here. There's one. I've got it in front of me. Where is this? Hang on a minute. Oh, yeah, okay. One of the questions that you were going to ask was, if you could go back in time and get a do-over for just one situation, what would it be? So my answer to that is I wouldn't, because I don't want a do-over. I don't believe in do-overs, and here's this fuck-up is a perfect example of why. And this thing was much worse than you know. In addition to what we had out on the market already, I had already made a commitment to a year's worth of injectors. I had made that commitment to Bosch Motorsport, who at that point was a relatively that was a new business relationship. And how it went down that it didn't get put in writing, I have no idea. But the fact is, in addition to the stuff that we had sold, I had made a commitment to buy a year's worth. And by the time I called them and said, whoa, put the brakes on that, they had all been produced and were sitting on pallets in a pile. And I was committed to receive a monthly shipment of those for the next 12 months. So here's why I wouldn't want a do-over. I sucked it up. And I spent $16,000 every fucking month for a shipment of those injectors that I couldn't use for a year. And as it turns out, I found out later, that was a big deal to Bosch. And the relationship that we have with them right now is really important to our business. And, I could have said, hey, fuck you, because there's other places I can buy core injectors. I can go through the aftermarket. I don't have to deal with motorsport. But had I done that, had I told them to fuck off because we didn't have it in writing, we never would have developed the 1300, the 1700, the new brushless pump controller that we're working on. And then, as it turns out, something went down in the market that worked really well too, related to Cobb. We do a lot of business with Cobb. And one of the things that came up was they were happy with the way that we dealt with the situation. And so I don't want to do over. It was the biggest fuck up Injector Dynamics has ever had, and it paid off really well for us. I mean, it literally cost me in excess of $250,000, but it ended up doing good things for us in the market. People realized that we were going to stand behind our product. It's funny. I remember calling Tony after realizing what was going on, saying, what do we do? And he said, well, we got to do the right thing. He didn't twitch. Plain and simple. So there it is, my biggest fuck up and the reason that I don't want to do over.
So you turned a totally screwed situation and turned it into a relationship that you're going to be able to benefit from for the rest of your life.
Yeah, except that...
Because integrity is more important.
Yeah, except I didn't...
And everybody views it that way.
Yeah, I just didn't realize it at the time.
Right.
I just thought Tony's going to buy a plane ticket, come to Arizona, cut my testicles off. Everybody's going to send me an email telling me I'm a cocksucker, and everything's going to fall apart.
So we're talking about self-doubt. You did all that in your own head. You built that whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
In your head.
Yeah, in fact, well, you know how argumentative I am. Now I want to argue with something you said earlier. Is that okay?
Please, let's get it done.
You said that you were looking for a common theme, and that the common theme was that there was not a lot of self-doubt.
I feel like that means people aren't being honest. That's what I think.
I would say on the scale of self-doubt, on a scale of 1 to 10, if the average guy is 5, I'm 11. Now, It doesn't mean that I think I'm worthless or that I have low self-esteem. In fact, I probably have more self-esteem than I should. But the point is that I'm always kind of looking over my shoulder to what I did yesterday to make sure that I did that correctly. I have ridiculous levels of self-doubt. I'm constantly asking myself, did I do this right? Am I doing this right? Am I going to do this right?
So how do you make sure that you stay moving forward and that you don't just you're not just neurotic and you end up just spinning around in circles?
Focus. I mean, it comes back to focus. I know where I want Injector Dynamics to be in 5 years. And so, because I'm focused on that, all of my actions, everything that I do, is directed towards meeting that goal.
Where's Injector Dynamics going to be in 5 years?
Well,
What's your goal? Like, what's the thing that drives you? You wake up in the morning, you're going to work for X number of hours. What are you looking for to accomplish?
Well, in strictly business terms and numbers, I want to triple our revenue by the year 2020.
So the decisions that you're making on a daily basis, you're not looking 6 months out or a year out. You're going, all right, this is going to be all money out as long as the return happens in a 5-year period.
Yeah. Yep.
How do you like that?
How do I like that feeling?
I mean, that's got to be a tough one.
It is. I mean, that's
writing a lot of checks.
It is. We've got a new building with 3 CNC machines and 2 engineers, and we haven't moved a fucking product out of it yet. And it'll be the end of the year before that facility is generating income. So, I mean, yeah, it makes my nuts shrivel up a little bit. But what else am I going to do? I don't want to look back when I'm 80 and all wrinkled up and can't do shit and say, gee, how was my life? It was okay. I want to look back and go, fuck yeah, that was cool. So.
Yes. That's inspiring.
It is?
That's what I like to hear.
How old are you?
I want the same thing. I think
now?
I'm 31.
Holy shit. Man, I wish I was 31.
I'm old.
Yeah. So
I'm starting to realize the same thing. I turned 30. Okay, now I'm 31.
Holy shit, I'm an adult.
Now,
yeah.
Well, yeah, what's going on? What have I accomplished? What's going to happen in the next 5 years? And I'm like, not enough.
Yeah.
So, I got to step out of my comfort zone on a daily basis. Yep. I got a knot in my stomach. Yep. And people ask me, you're cool doing these things. I'm scared out of my fucking mind, but I don't give a fuck. I'm going to do it anyway.
And you're honest enough to admit it. So let me ask you a question. When you've got a race car, when you're sitting there, I was going to say grid. You don't have grid. You're a drag racer. You get nervous beforehand?
Oh yeah. I'm not going to tell you what I don't do.
Right.
But yeah, absolutely. I start singing a stupid fucking song. I'll sing it out loud. I'll sing the stupidest song out loud because, I don't know, that works for me.
So I find, oddly enough, I just started going to the track again just recently. When I say going to the track, I mean driving a car. And I find myself, oddly, even nervous before I go out. And I'm not even racing. I'm just running a fucking street car on a track day. And probably the reality of the reason I'm nervous is that I'm always a little bit out of control and probably pushing harder than I should. But the fact is, I'm always tense before I go out. And it's not even a real race. And I haven't done any boxing in a couple of years because I fucked up my shoulder. But, just sparring. Some new guy shows up from another gym or whatever the case may be. I'm fucking scared to death.
But that doesn't paralyze you, right?
No, you got to suck it up and do it. But my point is self-doubt. There's plenty of it. I actually don't. Man, I don't believe that anybody is lacking in self-doubt. I don't buy it.
I agree.
Now, at the same time, I don't want to make it sound like I'm being critical of them for not admitting it, because for a lot of people, part of dealing with it might be not admitting it. That may be how they cope with it.
Fair enough.
So. Anyway,
so
how the hell
I want
to onto that?
We're going to go down all kinds of little rabbit holes. So, Paul, we were just talking about some bad experiences, and you managed to turn a really bad experience into a really positive experience that you're able to benefit from. And like I said, you're building relationships with these guys and offering something to them and getting something in return. But now I want to switch gears a little bit, and I want to talk about a project that you're most proud of. So this is the proudest moment that you've had in business, and what was that all about?
In business.
Have you ever looked looked back over the last few years and had one thing that, you were like, look at that. That's what you would tell people about. Look what I did.
Yeah, that's pretty easy actually. For me, that's the ID 1300. Not that many people know what it is, mostly because I don't know if it's a personality thing or if Tony and I are just too busy to do it, but we don't do a particularly good job of describing some of the things that go on in the background and our relationship with Bosch Motorsport. But the short story is the ID 1300 is a clean sheet design, and we developed that injector in partnership with Bosch Motorsport. And we did it specifically to meet a goal, which was there were a lot of instances where people were running ID 1000s. They would switch to E85. The injector was just not quite big enough, and they'd end up stepping up to the 2000. And, of course, there are issues that go with an injector, using an injector that's that big if you don't need it. We needed something in between. But the point is, we had a very specific goal, which was how much higher can we go in flow, yet still have the control on the bottom end that's good enough that people can switch back to gasoline, switch back and forth. Basically a dual-use injector. And it took nearly a year to accomplish that. I mean, the different versions that we went through and making minor changes and big changes and testing and on and on and on. The end result is that that's a very, very popular injector now, and we get rave reviews about that thing all the time. And what makes me proud, here's what makes me proud, being an unabashed capitalist, is that people that buy that injector are happy that they spent the money. Meaning,
and it's not a cheap injector.
No. In fact, well, we won't go into that story, but that injector ended up costing about twice what it was supposed to. It just didn't go as we planned, but it's good enough that it can be expensive, and we still sell the shit out of them. And the people that buy them are happy to buy them. Yeah, they're expensive, but they work, and people love them because of the way they work. Or how well they work, I should say. So that's a big one for me. That's my biggest thing in business that I'm proud of.
So you developed the 1300 from a clean sheet.
Yep.
It cost a whole bunch more than it was supposed to. They sell well. Everybody's excited about it.
Yep.
So you were able to create a product from nothing.
Yeah, and by the way, not just in our market, but some of the success of the ID 1300 is floating around inside of Bosch, even in Germany. You know, they've got internal presentations where they talk about, look, this is what we accomplished this year. To give you an example, every division of Bosch has to report to a boss, and the motorsport division, as part of their response to the boss, the CEO of Bosch North America, they had to send their report and say, this is what we did last year. And they received a big pat on the back for that. The guy said, look, this is an example of you guys looking out to a customer and developing something new. Basically, you got off your ass and made something happen. So there were plenty of accolades internally for that as well, and they deserve it because those guys kicked ass on that. It was a big project. So that's my proudest moment. There it is.
So,
but I got to say, that's just the beginning. I'm just fucking getting started with that.
Boom. Just getting started with the 1300, or with making new products from scratch that change shit. Important things.
There you go. The 1300 was just an inkling of where we're headed. And sure, I might crash and burn. I might be homeless in a month or a year. But if I'm not, there's going to be a lot of cool new shit out there. A 1700 is almost ready. That'll get some attention as well. But you did mention when we started on this that this was about business, not about specific business pieces. But yes, that is just the beginning.
Okay, so Paul, what still needs to be done in this industry? What product needs to be invented? What void needs to be filled? I probably should look at it that way. That's a proper, organized way to do it. But what really happens is I have cars that I like to play with. Tony has cars that he likes to play with, and you're trying to accomplish a specific goal, and you say, well, shit, I really need one of these to get the job done. Maybe one of these was the 1300. Or, wow, on all these cars that I'm working on, as I'm gathering this data, I'm realizing there's one thing in common that these cars all have that's all fucked up. Maybe I can find a way to fix that. So rather than looking specifically with a big picture view, I see problems around me all the time. Little things, fuel rail pulsations, for instance. Maybe a bigger deal than I realized in aftermarket systems. It's something we're looking at closely right now. The fuel pump market is a fucking mess. I mean, how many fucking Chinese pumps with a different logo on them can we see before somebody gets pissed off and says, hey, let's fix this? So that's something we're working on. And I realize that in saying that, I probably just pissed off half the people that are listening to this. That's nothing new.
I can't say that I really give a shit. I mean, come on. Just put a different fucking logo on it. Here you go. And then talk about how you designed it to do this and do that. Meanwhile, I'm getting the flyers from these same fucking people in my email once a month. Hey, we can put your name on this pump. Anyway, yeah, we're going to work on pumps.
Okay. So instead of what product needs to be invented, what void needs to be filled, the answer is you don't know.
Yeah,
because
really
what you're doing is working on the car and saying, that's fucked up, we're going to fix or address that issue.
Yeah, I mean, there's more to be done in injectors. There's a lot that needs to happen in fuel pumps. Particularly, I think, fundamentally in the way that the pumps are controlled. But you said you didn't want to be technical, and that's fine. That makes sense. Right now, our focus is injectors and pumps.
In one sentence, why did you succeed when others have failed? I'm looking forward to this one. I feel like you're going to have like a one-sentence thing. I know how much you hate summing things
No,
up.
I don't. Actually, I enjoy that. How about one word?
Please.
Focus.
There it is. Okay, we're going to go to quick answer stuff. I'm going to fire these at you. Everything here is not supposed to be a dialogue. You're supposed to just get these going.
You didn't tell me this was coming.
Quick answer questions. Tell us about a game-changing product you've seen in the last year and what makes it a game changer.
Oh, does it have to be the last year?
No. So there hasn't been a game-changing product in the last year.
Well, the one that sticks in my head are the spool valve dampers from Dynamic, but I think those are several years old. Oh, you know what? Okay, I saw something at PRI, the Hydromat.
Yeah, what is that about?
I don't know, but if it works as well as it looks, that's a game changer.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it looked pretty cool to me.
What is it, just pull fluid through a membrane?
I have no idea. Not a clue.
Wow. All right. Do you have a favorite software resource for keeping yourself organized or scheduling appointments? This could be Google Calendar, Basecamp. Tony uses Reich.
The funny thing is I told Tony about Reich. The difference is that Tony actually uses it, and I try to use it, meaning I get things entered in there, and then after a while I forget that that's there, and I ignore it. I am horribly disorganized.
Okay, so the answer is no, nothing.
Nothing.
Piece of paper and a notepad.
That I lose. I write everything down, and then it's under the floor of the fucking truck or some shit like that. Sorry, it's bad. It's really bad.
No, that's the truth. That's what we're looking for. Do you have a favorite app? I know you're the technology mogul, right?
I don't use apps. The problem is I've got these big fucking sausage fingers and this little tiny phone. It drives me nuts. In fact, these days I can't even see the fucking phone without my reading glasses anymore. So my favorite piece of software of all time ever is Microsoft Excel.
Okay. How about a most useful tool? This could be something fancy like a picoscope.
Microsoft Excel.
Microsoft Excel.
Yep.
Okay.
Or my brain.
How did you spread the word about what you have to offer?
I didn't. Motec did.
Okay.
And, well, actually, to be fair, Motec started, which got me in touch with Tony, and Tony spread the word. That's more accurate. I didn't do it myself. I'm not particularly good at it.
Fair enough. So we already talked about the do-over, and we covered that perfectly. What's the future of automotive performance?
Ooh.
Is everything going to be direct injected? Is everything going to be a hybrid?
Eventually. And in fact, we were looking real hard at direct injection, even working on some stuff, and realized that the market's just not there yet. Not just in terms of numbers, but understanding. It's pretty complex stuff, and truthfully, for any good thing to happen with direct injection, the people that are doing the calibration work, the hot rod shops, they're really going to have to pick up the pace to be able to keep up with it. Now, the other thing that's important to keep in mind for direct injection is that the ultimate power potential is still pretty low. You just can't move very much fuel. You have a window of about 25% duty cycle to effectively inject fuel, and whereas we can comfortably run up into the mid-90s with port injection. So look at it this way: with port injection, we can inject fuel pretty much all the time, 720 degrees.
Right.
With DI, we're limited. Well, not limited, but practically 180 degrees is a good window to fit that within. So there are big limitations there. And for that reason, I don't think that DI is going to take off and change the world. I mean, consider this. It's still in its infancy at the OE level. Certainly they're doing things well, but they're not all doing it well. I mean, you've heard about carbon buildup on the back of the valves.
There's crazy carbon buildup. I've worked on a lot of things with just 30,000 miles, and it's ridiculous.
I'm not saying that DI is bad by any means. I'm just saying that I believe it's in its infancy, even at the OE level.
So when I ask you about the future of automotive performance, and I suggested direct injection, one thing that comes to mind is everything now, like for example, let's take the new NSX.
Yeah.
It's got electric motors on each front wheel. It's direct injected. To work on that car, it's not going to be your garage. You're not going to be able to take it to your local performance shop.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by the future of automotive performance. How's that going to change as far as, is everything going to be, there's going to be one shop that manufactures and really knows this platform, and you have to go to them?
I don't know. I wonder about that a lot. I really don't know how it's going to go. I suspect that to some degree, people's expectations are going to be lowered. And what I mean by that is I've got, actually the car's parked right outside the office right now, a 2007 Shelby GT500, and the guy that I got it from said it drives like stock. I wasn't too concerned, but that was what he said, and there's no fucking way that thing drove like stock, not even close. I hear it a lot, but the fact is it wasn't even close to driving like stock, and people have come to accept that when they want to modify their car, it's okay to make it a piece of shit to some degree. So I think some of that's going to happen, but the reality is for big power stuff, DI is not a player for a long, long time. When I say a long time, I mean, I don't expect anything big to happen for 5 years.
Okay.
But of course, that's an opinion, not a fact. So you'll have to kick that around and decide what you think of it.
Well, I guess time will tell.
Yeah.
So, Paul, finally, what's the future for you and for your company? I guess we already talked about that a lot.
We did.
We talked.
Yeah, the future for us, growth, and I can't even decide. I can't even define exactly what that's going to be, except that whatever it is going to have value, real value, and I think that. I think the idea of, let me talk about what you're doing for a minute. You are trying to look at people who have had some measure of success in our industry, and you're trying to find a common theme or trying to find things that those people have done well or poorly so that the people listening can learn from that. Is that accurate?
That's absolutely accurate, so that everybody that's trying to do significant things and add value to the community have somewhere to look to find that information. Well,
I think that it's worth pointing out that I figured out that making money is easy. You're going to laugh, but it is easy. Here's what I mean. If you offer value to someone, you will make money. You have to offer value to the people to get their money, whatever it is. It doesn't matter if it's a $36 DVD player from Walmart that only lasts a year, that is seen as true value in the customer's eyes, or if it's a $250 fuel injector. All any of us are really doing is playing the same game that we played when we were kids at school and we opened up our lunchbox and said, what have I got and what can I trade it for? So if you're the guy wandering around with a carrot trying to trade it for a Snickers bar, you're not going to make a whole lot of money, right? Because nobody's going to do that. No kid in their right mind is going to give up a Snickers bar for your fucking carrot or your tuna fish sandwich. The point is you have to offer something that people value. It's that simple. I hear a lot of people complaining, well, the market will not support my product because it's too expensive. Well, is it really that your product is too expensive? Or is it that there's not enough value in that product for people to want to spend that much money? Are you trying to trade a carrot for a Snickers bar? So
good. If
you have something that people want and that they appreciate, how can you not make money?
Words to live by.
Maybe.
I'm gonna have to chew on that one.
Yeah. No, seriously, give that some thought. I honestly think that's the key to making money. Just make sure that when you hand somebody a widget, that not only in the moment are they willing to hand over their dollars, that when they're done and they take the widget home and they play with it, they go, wow, I'm glad I spent that money.
So it's not about tricking. It's about real value.
Yeah.
I mean, that seems like an obvious no-brainer.
I know it does, doesn't it? That's why I jokingly went back to the kids, trying to trade up with whatever's in their lunchbox. I mean, it is simple. I really think it's that simple.
Last thing, Paul, how do we connect with you and your company?
Connecting with me is
like your Facebook page, baby.
Well, if you're brave enough to go there, you deserve it. But to connect with Injector Dynamics through Tony there at T1, I mean, he's the face of Injector Dynamics because he's the non-controversial guy who doesn't say fuck every third sentence and takes really good care of his customers. So he's the contact.
Paul, I want to say thank you for being on the show. People can find out more about you, what you're up to at doitforaliving.net, where we're coming up with real and actually useful content that you can implement in your business today. Right, Paul?
Useful. Yes, sir.
So thanks again, Paul. I really appreciate it.
See you later.
Thanks for listening to Do It for a Living. You can find out more about this guest, this show, and even details about what we just talked about at our website, doitforaliving.net. Check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/doitforaliving and tell us who you want to hear from. And most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Click subscribe. Do it now. Seriously. I'll wait while you grab your phone. Open up the podcast app, tap the subscribe button. When you subscribe, you help us gain momentum and attract more high-level guests.